Alright, let's check this out. This ship build is, well, made on the platform that just keeps on giving. The Type 10 Defender may not be the most practical of ships to fly, but it's surprisingly fun for what it is. You want to fly a big boat around that does most of your work for you, this is your boy. I call this Type 10 Defender the War Ox. I throw an energy caveat in here because this is an energy-based build intended for high-level PvE, but with enough attention to detail that this build might potentially at least withstand a PvP attack long enough for you to escape. Like I've said in past videos, I like to set my builds up so that they are reasonably gank resistant. Doesn't mean you should go find a Fertilance to tangle with, but it does mean that if you're careful with this build, you can hit high and you can hit high reses with this and not die, as well as high intensity conflict zones, pirate beacons, and other stuff of a similar nature. The thing you gotta watch out for in high level activities where the enemy NPCs are engineered is feedback cascade. That's really dangerous, and if somebody manages to catch you off guard with it, then you don't have a lot of time to react. So watch that meter on your shields and look for the feedback symbol, and if you see it, if you're in active combat and you're about to lose your shields, you should just plan on turning the shield generator off because you're not going to get it back very soon, and it takes up enough power that you want to be priming your frameshift drive, since it can't. The way it's configured, the frameshift drive can't run with everything else when your hardpoints are out. So, let me rephrase that. Because of the way the Type 10 behaves, I actually recommend that you get B-rated thrusters. For normal combat ships, A-rated's best, but it just doesn't make that big of a difference on the Type 10. And because the Type 10 is big and dumb and slow, reinforced and double braced. Normally you would do dirty drive with drag drives, but if you're in combat with multiple NPCs, especially if the NPCs are engineered, they do sub-target your modules, and your thrusters become a point of significant vulnerability. So all of the internals, except for the power distributor, are B-rated. In the optional internals, it's all hull reinforcement, module reinforcement packages, and then an 8B shield cell bank and the 7A prismatic, although you could swap that for a standard shield generator. Don't put bioweave shields on big ships unless you have engagement control. If this were something smaller and faster, like a Federal Corvette, bioweaves would be acceptable for PvE only, with the caveat that you aren't going to have enough shield integrity to take a longer slugfest. And that's the mistake that people make with bioweaves, is they think that faster regen is better. But that is only the case if you can control the engagement. So smaller, faster ships tend to be the rule with bioweaves, although in PvE, especially in a Haz-Res where you're typically not engaging more than 3 targets at once, bioweaves can get you by. Like you can work with bioweaves and it helps increase your combat endurance, but only because in Haz-Res pirate hunts specifically, you have wait time in between engagements. If you're going into a high intensity conflict zone or any other type of mercenary based PvE, you're not always going to have that luxury with big ships. With small ships you can get away with it. With big ships, no, you're committed, and you need to make sure that you've got the shield resiliency to withstand the fight. So I always recommend for high intensity environments that if you're on a large ship, you should always be running a shield generator or a prismatic. Don't run bioweaves. Let's see. The fighter hangar is swappable depending on what you're doing. This can solo a high intensity conflict zone, so when I'm solo I run the fighter hangar, but the netcode bug is still causing issues if you're running as part of a wing or in PvP. You're going to cause everybody else in the instance, friend or foe, to start to lag and rubber band dramatically, except for you. That's the catch with this net bug, is you won't perceive the lag, but everybody else will see you skipping all over the place, and it can even start screwing with the other NPCs. Hull reinforcement packages across the board. I'll go over the armor mix real quick because it's pretty close to balanced, but there's probably some fine-tuning you can do in here with the shields and everything if you really want to work around a little bit, but I do heavy duty deep, heavy duty deep. There's an AFM in here in case something breaks, but it's not, like, you don't have to have an AFM. Put whatever you want in there. And then thermal 5 reflective, thermal 5 reflective, and oh, I got the wrong button. Heavy grade 5 reflective. So all of your big hull reinforcement packages should be heavy duty deep plating. Your smaller ones are balancing the mix out wherever there's a hole. And then one 5D Mandrake Reinforcement package. One of my listeners recently asked me if I was going to do an overview of Mandrake Reinforcements. I talked to him directly, but there was a while back a bug in the way MRPs are calculated. They'll all take damage, but I can't remember exactly how it worked. But some of the stopping power of the other MRPs was being skipped. So even though they were taking damage, they weren't actually applying their protection effect to your internals. I'd have to talk to one of my friends about that. I haven't bumped into him recently. I don't know if FDev's fixed that yet. I'm not aware of it in any patch notes. So to make up for that, I usually just run one of the biggest MRPs that my ship can fit. So in this case, a size 5 slot, military slot. And that's, for now, what I will provisionally recommend for people building ships is, instead of a bunch of little MRPs, just put a big one in there. And then if that bug ever gets addressed, you can go back and retune things pretty easy. No engineering for MRPs in the game, which makes them really easy to work with. But you know, you have to. Actually, I should probably do a video about internals and integrity and how that plays into it. And I'll wrap MRPs into that once I know more about what's going on. And then as a personal taste, I have a docking computer because, like all large ships, the Type-10 is kind of a chore to dock. Hardpoint configurations. Pulse lasers on all hardpoints except for the 2 smalls and 1 medium, which actually is not reflected here. I keep forgetting to save that. This one's actually a Hound launcher with grade 5 high capacity and drag munitions. All of the pulse lasers are focused grade 5, and whatever experimental effect you feel like. It really doesn't matter. But I would recommend a mix of different ones. So in my Type-10, I have one that applies scramble spectrum. I have a mix of munitions. I don't have phasing sequence because I think it's kind of moot, and none of these pulses are Heelys because I'm usually alone. So throw a mix in there. Have at least one of them running scramble spectrum. It works like caustic in that it can't stack, but you should always have, if you're running pulses or burst lasers, at least one of them on your ship should have scramble spectrum, just so that you can kind of mess with the other vessel while you're firing at it. Let's see. The Hound launcher I mentioned is high capacity grade 5 with drag munitions. The Hound fills a very interesting role because of the way the missiles work. You get really rapid fire rate, but the missiles are super slow. With a shot speed of 600, it's actually possible for some small ships to outrun these. They have a piercing value of 60, so as I've mentioned in my corrosive shell video, it's a good idea if your weapons have piercing values below 75 to have corrosive shell, because it lowers the target's armor hardness by 20 points, making it a lot easier to attack larger targets with smaller weapons. These multi-cannons greatly benefit from it, but in reality, this one's mainly here to apply emissive munitions, and this one's mainly here to apply corrosive shell, which also increases damage to the target by 25%. So it's good to have. Just kind of toss it in there. High capacity for kinetics and missiles is a good idea because it increases synthesis efficiency. Depending on how liberal you are with the fire button in your Hounds, you can run out in a high intensity conflict zone, but if you're smart about it and you apply them well, Hounds will last the entire instance. The main thing that you want to make sure you're running is drag munitions for a couple of reasons. The first big one is that drag munitions causes the target ship that you're firing on, when it takes a single tick of damage, to behave as if it has 0 pips in engines. It seems to affect NPCs, although the degree to which it does so I'm not entirely sure. But against players, it means that for example, a Fertilance becomes an extremely drifty boy. It gets harder to handle, and you'll notice that he'll start widening off his curves in a joust if you happen to be unlucky enough to get into a PvP fight with these guys. The application time is a little over 5 seconds. I can't remember the exact window. But when you're fighting people with drag munitions on Hounds, you want to just be tapping that fire button every 5 or 6 seconds, so that you're constantly applying drag drives while you have a target lock, and you should be sub-targeting external modules. Hounds wreck externals. It's a great way to neuter an attacker. If you're dealing with special ops, you should be targeting their main hardpoints, railguns if they happen to have a reverberating cascade, or if it's a Fertilance and he's just hitting you with big multi-cannon, shoot out his size 4. You can also shoot out point defenses. I recommend shooting out the chaff launchers. 2 good volleys will kill a chaff launcher on most ships, assuming the chaff launcher is facing you when the missiles hit. And drives. Pack hounds love to chew up drives. It is a very, very powerful weapon. It's one of the best missile launchers in the game. It's so good, in fact, that it has been totally banned in curated PvP, but it's still a very popular weapon used in open play because it's all about guerrilla warfare in open play. If you don't have this weapon, it should be right up at the top of your priority list with prismatic shields. It seriously, absolutely wrecks other ships once the shields are down. But even if the shields aren't down, drag munitions is a useful experimental, and it applies pressure on people. It's very distracting to see all these missiles flying at you. It obstructs your vision. It fills the instance with smoke trails. It's just there's not really a lot of ways to lose if you have this weapon. And in fact, the more of them you have, the funnier it gets. But for this vehicle's purposes, 1 is plenty. Believe me, this Type 10 doesn't need more pack hound launchers to do the things it does. If you want to build, and I actually do have a dedicated missile barge Type 10. I can review that sometime and show you guys how it works because it's a riot. But this is a nice balanced build with multiple vectors of attack, good thermal output, good kinetic output. It's very strong in PvE and strong enough in PvP that you can at least escape if you get attacked. And you should be, with this build, focused on escape if you're in open play. Let's see, shield mix. Heavy-duty supercapacitors for most of the shield boosters. And then, let's see, one of the A's is thermo-resistant thermal block, and one of the D's is thermal block. That's because the power constraints power and cost. It gets really tight on this particular build, and it's because we're running an 8B power plant, which I recommend you still do because it makes the rebuy cheaper, and really you're not going to get enough power gains from an A to put another A-rated shield. At least if I remember right. It just didn't end up working out the way that I'd hoped it would. 2-point defenses to block incoming missiles, which is good. If your shields happen to go down, NPCs start spam firing, and then a heatsink launcher to help you deal with the shield cell bank. Let's see. Total cost of this build is 610, so it's pretty high budget, and the engineering is very high level, so this is another one of those ships that can be a long-term goal. But because of the B-rated modules, the rebuy is actually not too bad. Some ships will get north of 40. 30 is workable. It's a lot of fun to play with, and I highly recommend that, if you enjoy flying big ships, that this be on your bucket list. It takes a while to get to, but it's fun. And, well, I guess there's not really that much to say. It's fun. It's a great ship to fly, and used as part of a wing, it makes an excellent support ship. That's all I got for today, guys, so I will catch you later.